Good. Thank you.
Okay. There you go. All right. So again, we don't have to read that opening disclaimer about Zoom. Okay. First thing up is approval of the minutes from May 12th. Has everyone had an opportunity to go through them? And if anyone has any edits or amendments they'd like to make? Anybody?
I wasn't there, so no edits, but I can say, having not attended, the minutes are fantastic. It's
Darn, aren't they?
you can actually tell what happened. It's really good.
Okay, so that being the case, is there a motion to approve the minutes as written?
So moved.
I move to approve the minutes as written.
And is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. And Melissa, if you'd do the honors.
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Pete,
Abstain.
Smith,
Yes.
and Pasamato. I saw his microphone come out, so I was hopeful.
Okay.
We'll come back to him.
Okay. We still have a quorum, so we're good to proceed. We'll mark this. First up, abbreviated notice of resource area delineation, 250 Turnpike Road. I don't have the opening statements.
Yeah, do you want me to read that real quick?
Would you mind? Thank you.
Sure. And this will be continued, just an FYI. So in accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Southboro Wetlands Bylaw, the Southboro Conservation Commission will conduct a continued public hearing on Thursday, June 2nd, 2022 at 7 p.m. via a virtual Zoom meeting. The commission will consider an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation for a project located at 250 Turnpike Road, map 27, lot 2A for the applicant David Ferris of Ferris Development Group. The project description is confirmation of resource area boundaries. And the applicant has requested a continuance because they haven't received revised plans after the site visit with Joe after the last meeting.
Okay, thank you. So in that case, all we need is a motion to continue to our next meeting, the date of which escapes me present time.
6/23.
Okay, motion to continue until June 23rd.
I was going to let Liz go, but I move that we continue the public hearing until June 23rd. Do we have to say a time, like 7 p.m.?
All set.
No. Oh, never mind. I didn't say that. Oh.
Is there a second?
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. And Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Thank you.
Pete,
And next up, I think we're gonna be doing the same thing. Sorry.
Am I allowed,
so
am I allowed to do this one, or do I have to abstain because I missed the last one?
no, you can do it.
Okay. Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
Smith. Are we laggy? Okay. All right. And Mark is still not back, so that is unanimous. And then in the meantime, there's a request, because it's not 7:10 yet, for 84 Main Street to be brought up next, so that Peter can head to his next meeting, if that is okay with you.
That's great. Yep. Let's do it.
So bringing Peter over now.
Good evening.
So 84 Main, Melissa, would you do me a kindness and bring up the plan I submitted to you? Thank you. Melissa was very kind to provide the pollinator species list that I think it was a doctor at UMass Dartmouth, I believe, prepared this. So that is what is on the left side. So that is the full list of all plants that are native pollinators that we should be selecting from. And I did have the opportunity to walk the site with Melissa and two representatives from DCR so that we could discuss how we would best do this. A portion of the work will occur in DCR land. That's located on the lower left. So north is the top of the sheet in the way this is oriented. And this is behind the wall that's near the formal gardens at the carriage house that's there and the chapel. And the only, thank you for zooming in. So the only thing that I've identified in this zone is that there is an egress to pass between the wall to get behind the chapel, because there are some mechanical systems, and there's also the entry to get into the lower level of the chapel located there. And then also, I think, just from just a safety perspective, because there is an open guardrail that's located along Deerfoot Road in that section of the site, so that if there was ever the need for pedestrian passage, this would be the area. So that there would be no plantings done in that stretch between chapel, rear chapel, let's say east, and rear chapel west. But then once we get past that point of where the egress is, then we would plant that. And what I had said to Melissa is that we would just select from the list something that, you know, I don't want to trample it, but again, heaven forbid there's ever an emergency and somebody needs to go through here. I just didn't want to be there an obstruction, because this is really the only passageway for someone to be able to get along the bank of the aqueduct back out to Deerfoot Road. So we would still plant it, but we would just select plants that are suitable for pedestrian passage. And then from that point to the east is all the wildflower that we planted. And I colorized this just so you could see how vast that is. It's about 7,700 square feet. I should have also mentioned the area, the small area that would be behind the wall would be 550 square feet. Then there are two other areas that we've suggested that we do this, and they're all associated with the water bodies that are on the site. So Mr. Pascoli prepared a pond. It's a small pond on the site. It's an aerated pond. And what we're proposing is to put pollinators around the entire perimeter of that. So that's 1,450 square feet of what we would call the native plants from that list. And then the third area is located along the total east. If you could pan over a little bit, Melissa. Thank you. That is the, it's almost like an aqueduct, if you will, because it's transferring water from the north side of Main Street to the aqueduct along the DCR property. And it's a stone channel, basically. So these would be plants that would probably not necessarily need more of a wet foot, but something more dry oriented. But it's just to provide a buffer so that occurs to that limit along that entire edge. And then to the east of that, I just want to bring to your attention, I do not take any credit for this, but Mr. Pascoli had provided an easement to, I believe it could be MassDOT, but it was definitely part of the roadway improvements project. They were using that as a staging area to do all of Main Street work. And that was supposed to be restored. Now that work has not been undertaken yet. And there are actually some invasives that have propagated through that area. So there would have to be some invasives management and then the planting. But I had also talked to Mr. Pascoli about doing some, pocket plants in that area as well. We're not going to take credit for it, but I can just again say that is something that would go forward. There's supposed to be some proposal by Southboro DPW for the improvements in that area, or at least that's what I am told. So there'll be one more area that's pretty much designated just for plantings, and we'll make sure that those are all native and that they are. We're trying to promote the pollinator species for plants. So the new areas are 3,000 square feet, and the area along the aqueduct that we did for the native wildflowers was 7,700. So we provided about a quarter acre of area designated for the pollinators. And I know that there are some other species that are non-native that got planted here. And again, I know your order did say to do this, and the idea of this mitigation plan was to try to offset some of those things that were done that were trying to keep the property in historical perspectives, but not necessarily recognizing the actual letter of the law and the order of conditions. I hope you'll view this in a favorable light. And the only thing that I didn't do was tell you exactly what plants we were going to do. John wanted to solicit some advice from Michael Weisham. He's with the historical, or was with the Historical Society. And he has a botanist that's been involved with the trees on the site. He's actually an arborist, I believe, by registration, registered arborist. So we wanted to just solicit input from the two of them on the list, but ultimately I would go back to Melissa with whatever we planted. And if you insist, I'll come back before the board. Otherwise, I would hope that you agree to this plan being what we go forward with, and I will leave it at that. Thank you for the opportunity, and I should have said who I was when I started. And I'm on behalf of John Priscoli, it's Peter Beams. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Yeah, so Peter said at the end, just for Kevin and Elizabeth, some plantings were installed that didn't comply with the order of conditions that the commission had issued. And the commission customarily in a situation like this or in any kind of violation scenario, we look to have any violation either remedied or some sort of mitigation that offsets it. And while the area of, in this case, it's the roses that are the non-natives within the buffer zone, the area of pollinator plantings proposed, I'm guessing is probably 2 or 3 times greater than the area of roses that were installed. So and these are native pollinators. I'll say from my perspective, I feel like it's adequate mitigation, and having Melissa's oversight ultimately on this gives me a great deal of confidence in it. And with that said, are there any questions, comments, or concerns from the commission?
I agree with what you said, Ben. Seems like good mitigation, and I certainly trust Melissa to manage approval of precisely which species are proposed.
A list.
Is there anybody in the public here this evening who wishes to speak on this, to make a comment or ask a question? If so, please use the raise hand function and we will promote you up. Okay.
No
not
hand.
Seeing it. Okay.
Oh,
Go
Mark
ahead.
has his hand up.
Mark has his hand up.
There he is.
Sorry for the technical difficulties. I just wanted to know, and maybe you already made a comment on this. I was trying to connect, and you may have already spoke about it, but I read that there's a pipe that is draining into the reservoir, and there's some proposed mitigation for that. Did you cover that, Peter?
I did at the last meeting that you didn't attend.
Okay.
So, and it might have just
Then
been
you
in
don't
those
need to
approved,
repeat
it
it.
might have been in those approved minutes that you didn't get to comment on either. They were well written, by the way.
I did catch that by Mr. Pete.
That's right. That's right. So yes, at the last meeting, and I apologize, there is a separate mitigation plan. If Melissa wants to present it or help me present it, we covered those. We covered those previously, and that is included, Mark. That is not. This doesn't mitigate what we had already promised.
Okay, then that I'm good. Thank you.
Good pickup on your part, though.
All right, so that being the case, I guess we ought to conduct a vote to, we'll be looking for a motion to issue an administrative amendment to the previously issued order of conditions for 84 Main Street. Is there anybody who would like to offer such a motion?
And I do have a recommendation not to drag this out any further, but maybe it would be beneficial for the commission for me to write up kind of what that amendment and specific conditions would look like, and maybe to include the previous ones about the invasive, just to have one final concise document. I don't know if that's agreeable to Peter and the commission, just to make sure we're all on the very same page.
I find that to be very good for clarity for all of our sakes. And also, I wanted to let you know that I thought we'd be postponing this till the fall, because planting being, more strenuous here in the summertime. However, we have actually put in an irrigation well for this site. It's actually a fairly robust well. So we are actually going forward with that work, and John wants to do the work right away. He's actually anxious to do this. So I would say to you that this is going to go forward quickly, and I think we'll all be better for it. And I also just wanted to say the wildflower planting there, it happened to be that rain that we had in 21. If there was any one good thing that came from all of that rain, it was that really established itself extremely well. I've never had wildflower that dense in one growing season. So it is, and actually everybody that goes out there admires it. So if there was ever any reluctance in the beginning, it's all been embraced by everybody that's involved in this project. It came out fabulous. Thank you.
Great. So Melissa, would we be able to conduct a vote at the end of the meeting? Would we have, or do you need time over the next 3 weeks to get this? I know it's all.
Yeah, I think I would probably need till the next meeting for the official amendment, just so I can make sure I get all the invasive as well. But if you want, in the meantime, to at least, you can make a motion to approve the mitigation plan as presented, with a final kind of amendment to follow on 6/23.
And perhaps even with a proviso that the commission is comfortable with work beginning on the mitigation plan.
Correct.
Prior to the next meeting.
Yep. So you can vote to authorize work to proceed as depicted in the most recent mitigation plan. And then at the next meeting, we'll make another formal motion to do an amendment and get all the kind of various small things in order, so it's all in one final document.
Perfect. Sound like a plan to everybody? And
So moved.
Perfect. And is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right.
And
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
Smith,
yes.
Pasamato.
Yes. And one good thing about a virtual meeting is it's recorded, so it's now memorialized. So
Very good.
Peter, everything
Thank
you said
for
is
your
now on
time.
record.
All right. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
All right. I hand the reins over to Mark now.
Did you open or do anything about the first public hearing?
We did the first, just not the second.
Okay. All right. I did hear Ben say we don't have to read the opening statement.
He was talking about the opening the meeting.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
All right. So 710 NOI and SMP 200 Turnpike Road. In accordance with the provisions of the Southboro Stormwater Erosion Control Bylaw, Southboro Zoning Code, Chapter 174, Section 13.5, Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40. The Southboro Wetlands Bylaw, the Southboro Conservation Commission will hold a continued public hearing on Thursday, June 2nd, 2022 at 7:10 p.m. by a virtual Zoom meeting on the petition of CMJ Ventures LLC for construction of warehouse space, salt shed, and other site improvements at 200 Turnpike Road, map 28, lot 1-3-C. And they've asked for a continuance.
Yes, they're working on revised plans and comments from both us and planning board.
Okay, so they'll be ready next meeting.
As far as they've notated, yes, they'll be at the 6/23.
So this is a request for continuation to the next meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington. Sorry, Kevin, I didn't hear you.
Yes.
Okay, Pete,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Pasamato.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm all out of sorts now here. Catching up. Okay, so new and continued business, request for certificate of compliance for 24 Granule Road, DEP number 290-1056. You're waiting on final as-built?
Yes, and I did receive that right before the meeting. I've got the engineer loading in now. They put in the trench and the native plantings as mitigation. So my recommendation is to issue the full COC. But if the commission has any questions, I believe James Tetro is here to answer them. And I do have the as-built I will show just really quickly. It's pretty much what we saw at the last meeting, just stamped and certified that this is where the trench was installed. There's an access port at the end for cleaning as discussed, and the shrubs and the, I forget which oak they put in, red oak, and some of the other plantings have been also installed.
Anybody have any questions? Comments? Nope. Okay. So do I hear a vote to issue a complete certificate of compliance for 24 Granule Road?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Pete.
I abstain this one, yeah?
You don't have to, no. It's not a hearing, so it's up to you.
Sure.
Okay.
Is that a
Smith?
solid yes?
Yeah, is that a yes? Okay. Smith?
Yes.
Pasmato.
Yes.
All right. Danielle, since I see you in the attendees, I will have that COC to you first thing tomorrow morning, so your attorneys can have it. You're all set.
Thank you for your consideration, commissioners. Thank you very much on behalf of the applicant.
All right, have a good night. Are you still staying?
See
He's
you.
good.
Okay. Next up is a request for certificate of compliance, William Clary Lane, DEP number 290-862.
So this is the construction of the road for William Cleary Lane. The individual house lots have been closed out, and all relevant issues in terms of compliance have been addressed during the town meeting vote for road acceptance. So based on what we have been doing recently, I got the as-built from the DPW and the review. So my recommendation is to issue this full COC to close it out, because it's showing up on some title searches for people selling their homes. And just as a kind of an aside, Joe, through the planning board and the open space, did a open space inspection, I think last year, and did find some kind of yard waste general encroachments, but that's planning board jurisdiction. But just so you're kind of aware that the town's kind of been out there looking at this recently. And so, just to double check that the open space was also in kind of the approved places.
Yeah, the only comment I have on this is it's interesting that the town accepted the public way with a open certificate, open order on it. I mean, you would think that,
Yeah. Well,
all the I's would be dotted and T's would be crossed before the town accepted the road, but.
I'm surprised with this one because it's newer, but we just ran into this a couple months ago with Boswell and one other. It's surprising that the roadway doesn't seem to get closed out, but all the house lots do, so.
Yeah. All right, any discussion on this one? Nope. Okay, do I hear a motion to issue the certificate of compliance?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Pasmato.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, next is request for certificate of compliance for 12 Barn Lane. This is a storage management permit.
And this will be on the next meeting. I actually got 10, 12, either 8 or 14 too. So I haven't finished those inspections. So those will be 6/23.
So there'll be 5.
I think there's 3 on Barn Lane,
Oh,
all on one side.
okay, 10, 12, yeah. Okay. So that'll be on next time. That's open. All right, Chestnut Hill Farm Management Plan.
So we have DA Hayden and Mike Francis from the trustees. For those who weren't at the meeting last time, the select board sent over some comments to be discussed, and the trustees have responded in kind with a letter of their own. And since we kind of made a lot of progress when we had them in front of us to have that back and forth last time, I think we all agreed that this would be probably the best avenue to hash out the remaining questions.
So I did read the selectman's letter, but I did not read the all of the letter from the trustees. I didn't have time. It was kind of long, so I wanted to really digest it well. I'm sure it's thorough, but I personally ran out of time reading it before this meeting, so I apologize for that myself.
Do you want DA to start going over maybe some of the points that they made in their letter?
It'd be helpful for me. I wasn't at the last meeting, so maybe I'll look to others and potentially Ben for some guidance on this one.
Yeah, we didn't talk about it last meeting. We just received the comment from the select board right before. So this is pretty new for everyone. So maybe it'd be good, DA, to go through the points and responses.
Okay, good evening, everyone. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Fine, thanks. Ben, remember at the last meeting that Mike and I attended, at the end of the meeting, you said to me, so what happened at the select board meeting? And I said I didn't know because we hadn't attended. We weren't invited to attend. So then subsequently, Melissa received a letter from Mark Purple recapping what had occurred at the select board meeting. I then watched the recording of the select board meeting. I don't know whether anyone else has done that. Our team did on the trustees side. So what I said to Melissa is, would it be helpful to the commissioners for us to prepare a response that then you could look at and determine whether this was appropriate for your use or anyone's use with regard to the letter from Mark Purple. So that's kind of the quick recap of where we are on this. You're right, Mark, it's a fairly long letter, but it seemed as though there was some confusion on the part of some of the selectmen in terms of, and you know, the election occurred after this meeting too, so it's a different, now it's a different group. But in any event, we reviewed all of that in this letter and explained again the you know, the trustees' background, the fact that the Conservation Commission is in charge of the CR. We discussed the fact that we're a 501c3 organization and that we are not a for-profit organization, so we do nothing that is commercial. We also reminded everyone that we have committed and fully committed to the planning board and to others that the new Deerfoot barn at Chestnut Hill Farm will not be a place for weddings, even mini monies. And then we went through each of the comments from the selectmen and responded to those. So that's kind of what this letter is in total. I don't know how you want to do this. Do you want me to go through each one of the comments, or how? Because it is, you're right, it's a little bit lengthy, and I also don't, I want to be respectful of your time.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine that it's long. I was just apologizing that I didn't have the time to read it all before this meeting and digest it against the selectmen's comments. I got halfway through page 2, and you know, I had some other meetings I had to attend to. So, you know, I think that tonight we've got some time. So if you want to go through your various points that you're trying to make and you know, verbalize those to us, I think the board would appreciate that.
Okay. Does that work for everybody? So why don't I just, do you all have a copy of the letter? Okay.
I do.
So why don't I just move to the selectmen's comments? Because I think we were, as an organization, dismayed by the tone of the conversation at the select board meeting. And we also felt as though everybody has worked so hard on this management plan with Melissa and our colleagues at Open Space, all of the commissioners, the Sudbury Valley trustees, and certainly the trustees, a variety of statewide experts at the trustees, to really do the right thing with this management plan and have it reflect the values of the property that we all cherish. So if you go to the page where the comments from the select board are in place, we did respond to each one of those individually, just so that everybody has the answers in writing. The first comment was that any reference to a one-day liquor license in the programming and public engagement section should be removed, as it is subject to issuance by the select board and not whether it is included in the management plan. Our response was that we believe this information should definitely stay in the management plan, because we work to provide food-centric programming and dining opportunities, farm to table, culinary opportunities, and many of these include local food and beverage offerings. And we also reference the fact that both the trustees and the Sudbury Valley trustees believe that these types of events are consistent with the CR. This is all information that, you know, we as a group, the commissioners together have discussed, and that it's important to acknowledge the fact that a one-day liquor license is required for these things, and that it is under the purview of the select board. So that's why we think that that should continue to stay in the management plan as it is, acknowledging that, you know, the select board does have the decision-making power, if you will, over the one-day liquor licenses. The next comment.
Sorry, can I just,
Sure.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, can I, it might be helpful if after each one, we just real quickly maybe address each one in turn. Otherwise, at the end, we might get a little bit kind of tangled up. I just wanted to ask you, I can't remember the language in the current draft of the management plan, but does it say that the one-day liquor license is issued, you know, at the sole discretion of the selectmen, or words to that effect?
I believe it does. Let me double check. The language I don't believe it does, Ben. What it says is with required one-day liquor license.
You know,
And that,
the selectmen have a, you know, sort of a valid jurisdictional concern. I'm hopeful it could be addressed just with a sentence in there saying, you know, the one-day liquor license, you know, is required one-day liquor license is issued at the sole discretion of the Board of Selectmen. Just so that it's clear that, you know, the commission isn't granting any kind of permission for that aspect of it. That's outside of our control.
I can add that.
Thank
I think
you.
they're called the select board now, but yeah.
Sorry. Thank you.
I'm writing as we're talking. That's why my head's going the other direction. Okay.
Yeah, and I do know previously in the past when they have an issue that they featured, you know, beverages from local smaller businesses. You know, Cold Harbor Brewery in Westboro, for example. They brew beer using coffee beans from Armino that are in Shrewsbury and things like that. So I've been out in different places and gotten positive feedback from it. You know, that it's nice. It isn't that, you know, you've gone down to the liquor store and you've loaded up with Budweiser beer. You know, it's not that.
You're right. You're right. Yeah, we always try to use local craft beer
Right.
at all of our events. And you'll see as you kind of travel the trustees properties throughout the state, that depending on who's, you know, who are the craft brewers in that particular area, you'll see those products reflected at our various properties.
And a lot of them use, you know, local goods, you know, hops and things like that they've grown locally as well.
Yeah.
So
And just as a
And-
quick, oh, sorry, Mark, go ahead.
no, I'm done.
And just as a quick background for the new members, the original reason we had some of this language in here is that there were previous concerns about these type of events being allowed under the conservation restriction. So we went to the Sudbury Valley trustees, who are our CR gurus who we go with to these type of questions, and they're in review of this conservation restriction and the materials from the trustees outlining what the events would entail and what they include, including the beer and wine and the food. It is not prohibited in the CR. So in discussions about when we're revising this management plan, we, as a commission, decided that it would probably be good to call out that in some way that these type of events are allowed. So when they do go to the select board or other boards for permitting, where it's been a concern in the past, the trustees might have a document that shows that this is in compliance with the CR, but it's still up to the select board to ultimately issue the one-day liquor license.
Any other questions on that one? Okay, so the next comment said regarding pasture management practices, 10 acres are managed to support the grassland breeding birds. How does rotational grazing in the field during the early summer, not conflict with not grazing between May and July 15th? What is the definition of early summer? So our response was, this section in the management plan reads, these acres are not grazed from early May through July 15th to allow ground nesting birds to successfully raise their young. This sentence clearly explains that grazing will not occur in the early summer, May 15th through July 15th. So I think we were quite clear in the management plan. I don't know what confusion might have been there.
Maybe I can clear that up. There, in an earlier draft, there was another part of the management plan where it actually referenced early summer grazing, and there just seemed to be a conflict there, and it was more just to, I think, to get it clarified. Somebody had brought that up to me, back when I think when the first draft came out, somebody mentioned that to me.
Okay.
And, in fact, so, I meant to mention that at the last time that you came in, and neglected to, but that's all it was.
Okay. Any other questions, comments on that? Okay. The third point is there an expiration of the current forestry plan, and are there any plans to update? This actually, we recognize the forestry plan was completed in 2009, and it is supposed to be completed every 10 years. So we will update the forestry plan this year. And just so you all know, since we're not doing any logging or anything on the property other than what we have always done, we don't expect that there'll be any changes in that plan, but we do acknowledge that has to be done. And we use an outside service to do that. Any questions on that one?
No, but it's every 10 years?
Yeah.
Oh. I have property in New York State. It's every 5 years.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. At my expense.
This will be at our expense too.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 4, the comment was, do the programs that are listed under programming and public engagement in the management plan reflect the purpose of the CR with respect to scenic views, farming, education, and passive public recreation? This is fully covered. We as a group have discussed this many times. We've discussed this also with the Sudbury Valley trustees. We're in agreement that it does. As a matter of fact, it furtherances the intention of the CR. And I have several paragraphs to that effect in the beginning of the letter that I can read them to you, but I think everybody here is pretty clear on what that is if you've read the letter. So are there any questions on that, or?
I guess maybe just an observation or comment with respect to two of the things, the preservation of scenic views and the public passive recreation. It's more of a question of, our Sudbury, the trustees events going to be able to sort of stay out of the way of those other uses. And I think we have addressed that previously, specifically with the trailhead parking. We spent a lot of time getting a resolution to that to allow the passive recreation. And I think that would be the only conflict with passive recreation that I can think of. Was at one point it looked like there'd be overlap with the parking, which caused some concern. But I think we've got that worked out. And with regard to the scenic views, it's a question of are the events going to interfere with the scenic views? I guess I kind of I guess I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, you're right. We've discussed this a lot. The other thing is that it's the trustees' policy that whenever there is an event happening at a property, the property is not closed to the public. So, if someone wants to walk the trails, well, there's a guided hike going on, or there's a fire pit, something, or a farm dinner, they have every right in the world to do that, and we're fine with that. So we discussed all of that, but that's what that particular comment was. Should I keep going through this? Everybody okay?
Yeah. One thought I had that might have triggered that as well. I think when we had some livestock up there was some closing of some trails for public access while the livestock was there, but we were able to remedy that back in the past. It might have been when there was some of the pigs up there, that there were some trail closures and some rerouting of trails that weren't completely open to everybody for the public, if my memory is correct.
Mike, do you know anything about that?
It was some time ago.
Oh, it was. All right.
Yeah, it was some time ago.
Okay. Let's see. The next question was, are the restrooms referenced in the Deerfoot barn available to just event participants or to the general public? And our response is that the restrooms are available to the general public, but they're not open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that's the practice that we have with all of our trustees' properties. Questions on restrooms?
Does it need to be stated in the plan that they're open to the general public? I mean,
I don't think so. We never do that in other management plans.
Okay.
I mean, I'm happy to say that if that's helpful. Correct.
I don't think so. I mean,
I guess somebody was concerned, but I guess maybe they just
I think this is a concern about the use of the Deerfoot barn, and the sense that maybe I don't know what's driving it, but I think that's what it was related to.
well, if the barn wasn't there wouldn't be any bathrooms.
That's correct.
What would the public use?
They'd have to use the portaloo that's there, and that was one of the big reasons we wanted to have proper restrooms so that people did have a decent place to use.
Right. I mean, if you think of the ball fields at a school, right? The ball fields have to provide porta potties for the patrons that are playing the sport. The school's not open to them to be able to go in the school and use the bathrooms.
True. That's a good
It seems similar to me.
Yeah. Okay. Any
So-
other comments on the restrooms?
No, I think as long as there's a porta potty there, I think it's covered.
The next one is there a potential zoning issue with allowing private gatherings as it is currently zoned scientific? So I think we all know this property is zoned scientific. And our response was that the trustees has not received any sort of zoning enforcement order from the building inspector regarding the scientific zoning. And to the contrary, when we obtained the major site plan approval from the town planning board, nothing was brought up about that. So
I guess I would suggest to that that's sort of a separate issue from the farm management plan anyhow. If there is an issue that building department or zoning board of appeals feels it's necessary to pursue, we won't be intruding on their jurisdiction in any way. I don't see how we would necessarily address that in the management plan.
we don't either.
Okay.
Any other?
I mean, I think watching the select board, I think it was this private rental that really kind of set them off as one of the issues of contention, where they're really concerned that it may not be meeting the needs of the CRs. So if the rest of the commission's happy that it is, then I guess I'd like to hear how that meets the views and things like that.
Any other comments on this one? Okay. The next one is there an amended chapter 6161A plan to update Appendix C from the change in ownership to the trustees? So Appendix C is that forestry management plan. So we're going to update the management plan, but as a 501c3 tax exempt organization, we're not eligible for 61A or 61. Any comments on that one?
No.
The next one is please clarify that 51% of goods for sale are from the farm as required by the CR and not inclusive of the 8 acres across the street. So our response was nothing in the CR prevents the trustees from acquiring additional adjacent land that we would own or use or occupy as part of the singular Chestnut Hill farm. And we use rotational crop practices, and we may sell produce and products which have been grazed or grown on land that's part of Chestnut, but not the original premises. So we have the right to do that. And what will sometimes happen with farming is that, you know, an animal will be grazed in one part of the farm and then another part of the farm and then put back to another part of the farm. So that land may be used for that. It has been used for that. We may plant things in one area of the farm, transplant them to another part of the farm. So I don't know, I'm not sure what more we can do about that, but we're aware of the fact that we have to have 51% of the goods in the farm store, and that's very clear in the CR.
So now that this issue has been brought up, I feel that we do need to, address it in some fashion. I looked through the CR to the CR itself to try to resolve this in my own mind. And the section that, sorry, I'm pulling up my own screen so I get it right, that governs this, section 4B1F, starts off, the construction, use for the marketing of agricultural products of which 51% or more are grown on the premises, and it continues on from there. And then, so grown on the premises, and the premises are actually in the first paragraph of the document, the grantor clause. It actually defines what the premises are. By in fact, the book and page of the deeds of the various parcels that together make up the farm. The end of that paragraph ends with here and after referred to as the premises. So the CR, for better or worse, says that 51% of what's marketed and sold in the farm stand has to come from the premises. I understand your point also. It seems like a little bit of a thorny issue. And I'm of the opinion that we may, I don't know if the rest of the Christian agrees or not, but we may need to just refer this to town council to get an opinion on it. That's my take on it.
And the gap is that some produce is started on the premises, but moved someplace else to complete its growth before it's harvested and sold.
Right. For example, we might, on the produce side, we might start things in the greenhouse, or we might start them in a hoop house, or we might, move an established bed that may be, wet or something and try to let a field rest and then grow something in a different area. I mean, that's just, that's how the farmers work. I can't speak totally for the farmers, but that is how they work. And the same thing with grazing. With rotational grazing, we want to be sure that the animals always have, grass that hasn't been grazed down. And so we will move them from place to place. And sometimes that may occur across the street as well.
Yeah, so if an animal goes across the street and grazes, does that now prohibit that animal from meeting the 51% of it being grown on, Chestnut Hill Farm, which the CR covers, because
Well-
it spent some amount of time across the street eating?
Yeah, because then it may come back across the street again and, over to the other side of the farm and eat over there. I mean, that's just.
So
the way-
what if that particular animal spent 51% of its time on the Chestnut Hill side and not across? I know I'm being a little sarcastic and goofy here, but I mean, how far down the path are you going to go with this? I mean, if you get my point. Start monitoring how many hours it spends where.
I mean, is there a significant amount of things to be sold in the store that have spent none of their life in the premises?
No, we are not, we're prohibited from doing that. So for example, 49% of what we sell can spend its life elsewhere and be brought to Chestnut.
Yeah. But they're saying, talking about, excluding that 8 acres. Is there anything that is grown on that 8 acres or raised on that 8 acres that is never having any of its life in the other part of the farm?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I like where you're going, Jeff. It's like,
Well, then,
if
the-
anything, if anything has been on that 8 acres, it applies to the 49%. Right? If it spent all of its time over there, it applies to 49%. But if it spent any time over there, however long it's been, but it started or finished on the Chestnut Hill side, it's on the 51% side of the fence. That makes perfect sense to me.
Just to understand why, like, what's the larger concern? I mean, I just am trying to understand like what the larger issue is here. I don't know. Like, are they concerned that we're growing some lettuce across the street that we don't want to be selling at the farm? Like, who?
I think I can answer that. So
Yeah.
in the past, I've been really, really vocal in trying to, protect the rights the town purchased under the CR. And there are a lot of folks in town who, this town spent $5 million for the CR. And there are a lot of folks in town who are concerned that it be enforced as written, that the town gets what it pays for. That coupled with,
Does the town get a profit of what's sold in the farm store?
No, it's simply, that's the way the CR was written. And the commission's now been part of writing a couple of CRs, and you sit there trying to predict the future and you basically get it wrong is how it works. But I think there was concern that it would be a farm store that it would just be a commercial activity selling goods that didn't come from the town. I think another part of this is what people saw, I think in the last season or two, is a lot more activity on that 8 acres. In I think comparatively a little less activity in terms of growing vegetables on the remainder of the farm. And I think there was some concern that that there was albeit very technical, but a technical violation of the CR. Now DA's explanation that's being used as part of the process where, crops are started in one place, finished in another, but still have an attachment to the farm sounds perfectly reasonable to me. But because I've been sort of vocal in the past, I get calls from folks who, with various concerns. A couple others that I just want to bring up after we're done with all this stuff. But piecing it together, I don't know if that answers your question, but I think that's the genesis.
If I can add a little bit to that as well, Ben, that was beautifully described. The CR was written before the trustees were part of the picture. So I believe that, and this is what I've heard, that when the CR was written, it was really written to be sure that nothing commercial happened at that property. And because no one knew who was going to be managing at that point in time. So that's why there are things in there about, Christmas tree farming and, those sorts of things that could be, counter to what people were envisioning for the property. So it's a difficult CR for sure. But I think what Ben is saying is absolutely right. It's you're trying to predict into the future and you don't know eventually who will be on that particular property.
So I understand the rest of the commission may not agree with me on it. It's a purely technical issue, but I know there has been some concern expressed, and frankly, some concern expressed by our members of our select board at this point. So, I feel like there are a couple of questions where insight from town council would be helpful to us. The other one is, I'll be honest, I've heard from some folks in town who have less discretionary income, and I think feel a little excluded due to the price of some of the events. And there's been some question raised, the part of the prohibited activities, that section within the CR prohibits commercial activities, except for the carve out, obviously, for the farm stand. And the question is, are these commercial activities, or does the fact that the trustees of reservations is a nonprofit, by definition, make it not commercial? And I don't know the answer to that question, but I'd be interested to hear what the answer is from a legal standpoint. But again, these are things I'd like to bring up. The rest of the commission, of course, may feel differently.
Ben, do you want
Oh, sure.
I mean, I can just respond as we did in this letter, that the trustees does hold events throughout many of its properties. And those funds are not, we have to maintain our status as a 501c3. We've been a 501c3 for 125 years. So the events and the programming that we do, those funds help fund the organization. And the money that we make goes back into the organization and the properties that we steward. So, we feel very strongly that we're very committed to that. And even the dollars that come in from the farm store that goes back into the organization and back into the property, so that we're not a commercial venture. We're definitely a 501c3.
Understood. And again, it's kind of a technical, more of a technical legal question that everything you say makes sense. I don't have a grasp of the applicable law to really get it straight in my own mind. So I feel like an opinion from town council on those issues would be helpful to me, but the rest of the commission may feel very confident without and move forward without that. I get that. That was the last point in the letter. There's one thing I just want to bring up. Somebody pointed out that and maybe promised to bring it up, that the bobolink trail identified on the map apparently has too much brush to actually be passable. And they're concerned that at some point that it be made passable as part of the trail network.
Mike, do you want to?
Sure, I can address that.
Okay.
Yes, I think the majority of that trail is mowable. So
Great.
I'll check in with our team and make sure that the path is delineated through mowing. And if there is any other section that needs attention, I'll check into that too. And I think it came up at the last meeting about signage, a couple of different points about signage related both to the bobolink trail and to our pastures and gates. And I believe I had stated that when the pastures are not being used and the gates are open, we would want people to know, that they can pass through the gates. And the opposite would be true. If the gates are closed, then, the access beyond that gate, which in most cases should be locked, would not be permitted.
I need to step away for a quick second. I'll be back.
Thank you, Mike. And another question that you may be able to help with.
Sure.
First, I haven't actually been out there since this past fall, so I apologize for being a little bit out of touch. I understand there was and so this is all secondhand, and please correct any errors I have in my understanding. I understand there was sort of an enclosure attached to the farm stand for the purpose of washing and preparing vegetables. I may have that wrong, but it was sort of an open air lean-to type area that I understand has now been enclosed. And
yes, that's
okay.
the wash station. And
Yes.
so the vegetables come in, they're washed there before they're packed. And we received a grant from the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources to enclose that space for food safety purposes. And
Okay.
we are in the midst of doing that now.
Okay, so as you know, in the CR, there's a whole checklist of, regarding the farm stand, so many square feet for this, so many square feet for that, the farmstead, excuse me, not just the farm stand. So I just want to make sure that we are still in compliance square footage wise. For all I know, when it was just sort of a lean-to type situation, that was already included for all I know. But if it wasn't, are we still within the square footage?
Yes, as a matter of fact, if you haven't been there since last fall, we also took down a building. We took down that old goat shed that was dilapidated. So the wash station was part of that square footage calculation. So that's always been in there. And we updated that with Melissa for the, this final version. Melissa, is it 100 extra square?
Yeah, I think so. It's very minimal.
Okay,
Something like that.
yeah.
So it's very small, but it's all reflected in the map, and it's all been kind of redrawn so that it's very clear.
Okay, this is just a phone call I got earlier today,
Yeah.
and I just want to follow up on it.
Yeah, and just so you know, I did update, when I saw the building permit come through, I asked DA for that updated square footage chart, and I also attached it to the building permit as reference as well. So looking forward, we have a benchmark and viewpoint too.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
We're well below the square footage that's permitted.
Yep. Great.
Yeah. Thank you for asking.
Those are the two things that I just wanted to bring up. Thank you very much.
All right. So maybe DA, we can work on some language around maybe that 51% to propose to the commission as some happy medium and see where we can go with that and see how the commission feels at the 6/23 meeting.
Okay.
Is there any other items that the commission wants to see for the next meeting? If this is the final comment letter, I think that we are expecting from different boards. I don't know if it's feasible on your end to kind of maybe finish the edits for the revisions for the management plan and have us kind of look at the quote unquote final draft at the next meeting with all the open space and these comments included, so we can all make sure that the revisions have been made.
Great, and I will do that in partnership with you. Okay.
Is there anything else from commissioners on this one that you wanted to go over?
Not for me.
Thank you all again for your partnership in doing this. I know this process has taken a little longer than any of us anticipated, but we really, really appreciate the collaboration.
Same here.
All right, well, DA, I'll touch base with you early next week and we can get rocking and rolling.
Perfect. Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Thank you. And
Good
thank you.
night.
Mike.
Have a good evening.
Thanks. Good night.
Okay, Melissa, next up is S&P bylaw and regulations update changes. You want to take the lead in that?
Sure. So I haven't made much actual changes to the regulations. I did just kind of want to go over kind of where we are so far. I did also on the Dropbox, I did amend the application form. It's very unusable as it stands now. It's just a plain PDF document. It's very small font, small spaces for people to write, and it's not editable. So I made a editable, is that a word? Editable PDF that mimics what I had put in for the viewpoint application as well. So this application would better allow us to start accepting paper copies and electronic submissions. The previous application didn't even have a spot to put the project description, which I've always thought was interesting. But another thought that I had while doing this update is that this application is actually part of the regulations. And I didn't know if maybe that was something that we wanted to completely take out to better amend more regularly, or if we find that something is more useful or less useful to do more easily, because it is more of an administrative information request. And so the same would kind of go for, there's the legal ad sample, which is already very much out of date because it only gives you a chance to write in dates in the 2000s and nothing after 2010. And then I think there was the checklist as well at the end, which obviously would either need to be updated because our thresholds would be different, or it is something that we can completely take out of the regulations as well. And that would be consistent with our wetlands bylaw. We don't have any application checklists, etc., within that bylaw or regulations. And I think it seems to be consistent with, the ZBA and planning board, and that no other bylaw or regulation seems to have the application as part of the regulations. And not that it's difficult to amend the regulations, as it just takes a public meeting, but it might get confusing in the future if all we're doing is updating, application to add, something minor such as a disturbance threshold or something like that. So those are the main comments I had that I want to kind of go over and get your thoughts on. I don't know where we want to start, but and I also I ended up submitting a legal request for getting this out of the zoning code, and hopefully we can have that back by the 23rd, because I really haven't gotten a good answer either way. In other bylaws that seem to have the same language with it in the zoning code, it just simply states that it goes to Superior Court or Land Court. So I'm hoping that would be the easiest case forward, to be able to just turn some language to hit the goals that we're doing. But otherwise, I've asked town council to let us know how to move it out of the zoning code and what that might take, so that it, appeals aren't going to the zoning board, they're going to Superior Court, who might be more able and knowledgeable about stormwater to make a decision about it.
Yeah, it'd also be interesting to know if that's the only place it can go. I think it probably is. That it has to go to Superior Court. It can't go to any place else.
Yeah.
Because that could bog things down for folks, right?
Yeah.
Getting on their schedule, the length of time, all that sort of stuff.
Right. Yep. So I'll definitely give you guys an update, hopefully at the next meeting, on whether or not town council has to say about making that change.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I think we're good on the thresholds. We're still kind of moving to the minor and major, with everything an acre and over being major, SMP application, and anything from, I think it was a half acre up to, but not including an acre, would have that minor policy, which is really just through the building permit process. And we have that kind of one sheeter with those conditions. I did last, I think Wednesday, was listening to a great webinar offered by EPA and the Soak Up the Rain program about stormwater bylaws in compliance with the MS4s. So I did get quite a list of other towns that seem to have this major and minor, but haven't seen one that really seems to be as clear as I was hoping it to be. And it's not always in a place where I would expect it to be. I also noticed that a lot of them, their threshold, instead of putting 1 acre, they just put 40,000 square feet as their start limit. And, sometimes minor, they more have like an interdepartmental group, kind of like a site plan review of department heads, which I think the town has moved away from based on one of the local bylaws that non-residents can't be members of a board. So that's why I think minor site plan and planning had to go away because that just, it ended up being not illegal, but doesn't upheld very well. And it's a lot of concern with department heads, just issuing kind of permits or oversight on something that really boards should be looking at. But for us, that minor, really is very minor. It's just making sure that erosion controls are in place and kind of people understand that you shouldn't be tracking things out into the road. So I'm still trying to get a good basis to, or if there's a better example to change that. But as of right now, I've still carried through what we've gone over the last couple meetings, unless anyone has some good thoughts on that one. But they all seem to be consistent with what we have proposed. They're just laid out a little bit differently and more inter-permitting versus kind of administrative permitting.
So
that's great. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so I think I have this right. So if I don't want to say major, but an SMP permit would be required for an acre or more.
Correct.
And then a minor administrative sort of set of rules would be for half acre and above or 3/4 acre and above.
Leave the half acre and above.
Because I know that we talked about 3/4 of an acre at one meeting.
Mm-hmm. I think we moved it back to the half only because it became kind of very administrative. I think the concern when we put it to, I think the 3/4 was originally what we were proposing for the major, and we moved that to an acre.
To an acre.
So we moved the minor, for lack of a better term, from a half to an acre. But if that's still up for, change, if we still want to edit that.
So, Melissa, in the seminar that you attended, so you didn't see anything that, because my fear sort of in the back of my mind was in simplifying this, that we would run afoul of our MS4 requirements, but you haven't seen anything that.
They're very basic. It's literally outlining what we are, except it's focused more on, these, certain department heads will review it, make sure it's still a permit process. But it seems to be more, for smaller, still commercial projects, so they're tailored still towards the projects that are commercially based that would have more impervious than, say, a residential family home. While in Southboro, most of these half acre to 1 acres, it's because the commercials will be larger or will be captured by major site plan. And these are kind of the smaller residential projects and single family home constructions on those 1 acre lots, just to mitigate, tracking out sediment or erosion control. Because when, I think the person from Natick was doing their presentation and they were talking about the major and minor and differences. And then when I went and looked at their bylaw and regulations, it didn't seem as robust as they kind of portrayed it in the webinar. So I do have an email out to them because maybe I'm missing it, kind of in the language, or if it's kind of laid out a little bit more somewhere else. But that seemed to be, when I was listening, it seemed to be exactly what we were trying to do. So I was trying to look at that one. And I think Andover was the other one, because they also mentioned that Andover required the 100% natives too for plantings. So I was just trying to pull out some of those specific kind of examples, but, it's either the same as what we have, or it's just that much different where it doesn't quite fit in with what we're trying to do here in Southboro.
Thank you. And then just one other thing, The idea to remove a lot of the administrative stuff, and particularly the form from the regulations, is a fantastic idea. Simplifying it is good, I believe. And it doesn't, we don't lose any effectiveness or jurisdiction because of it. It just cleans up a mess. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. Okay. So I will plan to at least take those out. And then I think, what was the other? Oh, some other kind of items that I was thinking about today as I was trying to clean up some of the bylaw is if we wanted to talk at all about additional fees. We don't require any fees for amendments or requests for certificate of compliances. And I think the COCs is probably the biggest one that I was thinking of because it does take, a significant amount of staff time to review and do the site visits and things like that. And then, it's the amendments, maybe not so much, but the COCs, I think, is something that the commission may want to consider.
So we've talked about that in the past, at least since I've been on the commission many times. And the feeling has always been that if people have to pay to get a COC, they're not going to do it. They'll just leave it open. And when it comes time to sell their house, they have to do it. Then they will. A lot of times the title search doesn't catch it, and they're able to get mortgages. The feeling was charging them, even though takes time and effort. Sometimes they have to take time and effort. They have to spend money on engineers to come in and redraw, do an as-built, and then having us charge them a fee in addition to that. I think it's overkill. If you wanted to do it for commercial properties that are heavy lifting, like Ken's Foods or something like that, I could be, swayed. But for the general homeowner that's putting a deck on or putting a pool in, I think it's a burden.
Okay.
That's my personal opinion. And they won't do it.
I sort of like the idea that you pay for the NOI, like you pay up front, and then the COC, it's sort of the closing out of that same process. So to me,
right.
For wetlands, we do have a fee for closing out for a COC.
Okay, just not stormwater?
Correct. Yeah, that's why I brought it up.
For both cases, I guess philosophically, to me, it makes sense. You pay up front,
it makes sense. And
I agree with Jeff. Yeah.
And if you need to increase revenue, to me, it would be on the front end, in the application process as opposed to the back end.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we want to think about doing it for commercial? No, I think with the change of this bylaw, it will be mostly commercial or multiple, common development type projects. Commercial or subdivisions might be something to consider, or we can just mix it.
Again, I think I'm with Jeff.
Yeah.
If we're falling short on revenue, it should be on the application end, not the back end. I think getting them to come in compliance and close out their permit, there should be an incentive for them to do it.
Yeah. Do
Maybe
you
charge a fee if it's like years late?
Or a rushed service fee.
Yeah, there we go. So we do have, like in wetlands, if it's expired, it's like an extra $150. So we could do something like that. Because I think 9 times out of 10 for stormwater, they are expired. Maybe 10 out of 10.
I like incentivizing doing it on time.
So do we maybe want to consider it a expired SMP closeout fee?
I think that's not a bad idea.
Okay. I think our wetlands one is $150. If we want to go something similar to that. Kind of the middle ground of just enough where it kind of hurts, but not too much. All right, I'll look at some other.
That's a question. And
yeah.
And what's the So the incentive for charging them an expired, certificate of compliance, if you will, fee is because they neglected to renew it or something,
Or close out when
to
they
close
were
it out on
finished.
time.
Yep.
Um,
So I think, the commission can have discretion in terms of, if it was close and they're just waiting for something to stabilize or something that is communicated with the commission, then, we kind of work internally to say, okay, this is the timeline, but you have your documents in, you've been working on it. That's one thing. But if it's 10 years down the road and they're coming back for their COC, that's, researching and making sure that the plans are correct and things like that.
Yeah. So it's kind of like not paying your mortgage or your credit card bill on time.
Yeah, it's a late fee.
Yeah, I've got a phone call I have to take, so I got to do for.
Right. One other interesting one I got from Andover was that they also included, we have in our bylaw, which was also X'd out for some reason that I wanted to make sure. It said 3.4 states any activity that will increase the amount of impervious surfaces more than 50% of the area of the parcel or lot. I'm assuming we still wanted to keep that one. Or did we have a reason for taking it out because of the threshold changes?
So this is regardless of area of disturbance, if 50% of the lot area becomes impervious.
Correct.
Oh, geez.
Maybe that's why we took it out. A lot of them did have that, even with most of them had, like I said, had the 40,000 square feet just flat, didn't do 1 acre with the 43. And most of them still, even with the ones that had minor and major, had this threshold as well. But at least in my draft, I did have it crossed out, but I couldn't necessarily remember why, or thought that it necessarily should be crossed out. Maybe that's something we think on.
I need to think on it, and that we would definitely need Mark and Russ also part of that.
All right, so I'm going to extra highlight this so I can remember to come back to it. But then based on that comment, the other kind of one that I saw in the Andover bylaw and regs was for the paving and impervious material. So an increase of new pavement or otherwise impervious material, but also reclamation of existing pavement or a combination of both totaling 1 acre or more shall require a stormwater management permit. So they explicitly stated if you were paving over, you didn't need a stormwater permit, but if you were kind of milling or reclaiming at all and it totaled 1 acre, then it would require a stormwater management permit. The kind of one caveat that I noticed in Andover that kind of other towns, including ourselves, have as an exemption is kind of the repaving of town-owned ways. I just want to make sure I'm pulling it correctly. Exemptions, kind of normal maintenance of town-owned public land and ways is usually what or in the maintenance, reconstruction, or resurfacing of any public way and the installation of drainage structures currently as the regulations exist now is exempt. So a consideration is if we want to keep that exemption or if the reclamation and kind of repaving would now trigger a stormwater bylaw. That was a lot to throw at you, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, the first part, they're basically saying that reclamation or paving over something that's non-existing pavement counts as ground disturbance effectively.
Yeah. Right.
And that makes a lot of sense. If the town goes and the reconstruction of Main Street technically was exempt.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that it should have been. I mean, it was, but I don't know if it's.
Yeah.
Oh, Mark is back. That's another one for some thought.
So
What was
Mark,
that?
what I was saying is one thing that I was noticing in a couple of the stormwater bylaws and after the webinar last week is that a lot of towns are taking out essentially the exemption for repaving roadways. So as our regulations read now, if the town were to, where'd it go? The maintenance, reconstruction, or resurfacing of any public way and the installation of drainage structures or utilities within or associated with public ways that have been approved by the appropriate authorities, provided that written notice be filed with the Conservation Commission 14 days prior to the commencement activity. So the repaving or reconstruction of public ways right now is exempt under our bylaw. And what some other towns that I have been finding is that they have put in that paving, including new pavement, reclamation, or a combination of both that totals more than 43 or 1 acre shall require a stormwater management permit. So essentially, if the town is going to be milling and repaving larger sections of road that would total, more than the 43,560 square feet, then they would require a stormwater permit.
It'll trigger that threshold pretty quickly.
Yeah, well, that was kind of the con, I guess, would be we definitely see an increase in permitting and associated costs from that.
Well, they're not, because the town is exempt from fees, obviously.
Well, I guess on more, we'd still have to post it in the paper and do the abutter notices and things like that. But I mean, it'd still be on the DPW side, but essentially it comes out of the same bucket at the end. So something, don't need to decide tonight, but think about it. Maybe it might be a little bit better if I put some of these other ideas together and kind of have a this or that kind of checklist that you guys can go through and kind of consider. I'll try and get that out early next week, so we have a couple weeks for you guys to paw over that. And if you have any questions, on specifics or, want examples from other towns, I can get that to you so you have time to review it. But
this discussion is really timely because my driveway was torn up today. It's getting repaved tomorrow. And it's 3,300 square feet. And it doesn't seem that big to me when I look at the road.
Yeah.
So anyways, okay. Food for thought. We'll think about it.
I mean, a lot of it, what we're proposing here seems pretty not controversial. Do you think this roadway piece would sort of create a lot of pushback on the whole initiative to make changes from, I don't know, DPW or Select or other places?
That was the first thing that popped in the back of my mind.
Yeah, I think, I can assume that, like any department, I don't think that they'd want to have to apply for another permit, and wait kind of through another process. I think it would probably entail having to do a little bit more drainage than maybe what they're doing now, and not even just on the town side, but possibly for state projects as well. This could have maybe come in handy when they were doing Route 9, unless they pulled their exemption, but it's still kind of, we're already capturing new roads through the subdivision process. So this is really only going to be capturing, existing roads that are being repaved. And do we really want to go down that road? I think is the ultimate question that you guys got to think about.
Yeah. I mean,
I think it would require plans to be prepared. Which
I was just going to say that. I was just going to ask you, Ben. It would probably require plans and maybe pitch changes, and
which isn't an all bad thing, but it's an added cost. But how do I put this? Having a plan, especially when there are drainage concerns, is a good thing. But it's an added burden for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
and then on the flip side, there's definitely been some, public input about kind of keeping kind of keeping the rural feel of a lot of the, smaller roads. So in the future, when those do get repaved, if they would have to meet the rules of the stormwater bylaw in its entirety, think of Lover's Lane and how far that would need to be extended or widened, and Flag Road and things like that. We do have a lot of smaller kind of country roads that maybe don't fit this bill as much as, Natick or Andover, where it is a little bit more developed with full road widths and sidewalks and things like that.
Potentially creating more impervious, neighbors concerned with more water going onto their property. So if you're going to do that, you're going to put drainage in, and I don't know.
Right.
It may be down that path of overregulation.
Okay, so it's sounding like a no, but I'll still I'll still outline it, because as you guys talk, it's bringing more things up for me too, and it's like a lot of towns have it, but that doesn't mean it's great for everyone. So I'll put together a document. I'll put the thresholds back in there. We can hash those out till the very end if we kind of keep going back and forth. And then I will kind of put in a couple different items that I found through the webinar. And I was going to send it to you guys, and I'm sorry. And then I read the last line that says, please do not share, as it's not official. And I got very disappointed. But I'll try and see if I can at least maybe download the slides and send them out, because they really did have some great information. All right, so I will do that. I'll get that to you early next week. Is there anything else that you would like me to focus on, in terms of a this or that kind of item?
I can't think of one.
I'd also recommend just going through the reg update document that I had uploaded. I have a lot of things in the comments on the side to think about. So if you're reading through there and, something kind of, oh, right, I kind of want to think about that, or I want to bring that up, just let me know. And I'll try and maybe do another clean sweep through, because it's been manipulated so many times. So it does get confusing. If you download it and the formatting is wrong, just let me know and I can send it directly to you. I know I've been having that issue myself with my own stuff. So just let me know. Well, I think that's all I have for the SMP then.
Okay. You see other business?
There's not really much going on for construction. There's a lot of sites finishing. I'm still working on a lot of COCs and getting those final conditions. There's a lot that just need like boundary markers and just kind of their final inspection reports. And then for the Breakneck Hill dump, I updated you guys at the last meeting. And for those who weren't there, I had a meeting with DEP, our consultant from TRC and Town Council at Central DEP office to go over kind of the final assessment plan and discussions with the concerns that Miss Fallon next door had with part of the test pits being on her property. So we're still waiting for final approval from DEP on those amendments, but essentially we added 2 test pits at the property line on town property. So we're going to be starting there first to determine if there is solid waste visible. And if there isn't, then we're hoping DEP will give the okay not to have to do the 3 on Alexis's property, because that's what she's hoping for as well. But if we do find solid waste and DEP requires us to continue with the 3 test pits on Alexis's property, we will either, she will either need to sign that access agreement and get that to us, or if she is still uncomfortable with signing it and doesn't want the town on her property, then unfortunately DEP would probably take enforcement action against her individually as a separate kind of offense. So because we would have tried, as much as we possibly could. And DEP has also talked with her and discussed kind of the ramifications and what this work is all about. DEP has granted that if we fail to get the access agreement from the abutter, the town will not be held responsible in a force majeure kind of clause that we have done as best we can. And DEP will kind of take over the issue and the abutting property. So I'm hoping that either the solid waste doesn't extend that far underground, or, Alexis and the Fallons kind of understand when we do get to that point that we might need to move fast in order to get it done in a timely time. But as soon as we get that approval from DEP, Mark Purple's ready to sign the proposal from TRC, which will authorize them to start to prepare the notice of intent. So hopefully we can get that in front of us, I think for the mid-July meeting is what we're hoping for. And that would assume that we'd probably have test pitting done by the end of August, depending on our public hearing schedule and approval. So that's where we are with the dump. And then just otherwise, I am going to be releasing a flyer tomorrow on June 15th at 5:30 p.m. I'm going to be doing a webinar on nature-based solutions in Southboro. So I'll be sending out the link to all y'all. Feel free to share and send it out. This is going to be part of the MVP, the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program action grant that I received, which was creating an impervious surfaces data layer for Southboro. So I have received that data layer. I'm kind of working out the kinks and kind of manipulating the data to get it what we needed to do. But kind of the use of nature-based solutions in Southboro is what I'll be talking about on the 15th. And then on the 22nd, also via webinar at 5:30, I will be doing kind of the final presentation for the deliverable for the grant and discussing kind of the outcomes of the impervious surfaces. So feel free to tune in. It'll be riveting. I'll have some examples from within Southboro nature-based solutions, various rain gardens, pervious pavement, etc. So it should be fun. As fun as stormwater can be. That's all I got.
Okay. One thing I wanted to try to identify is people's summer vacation plans, and if we have any meeting trouble, to try to get ahead of that if we need to move anything around. So typically we get into the last couple of weeks of July and August, we usually run into vacation issues with folks trying to take vacation before school goes back in session.
I can read out a couple dates for the summer meetings if that would help anyone.
So I will not be available for the next meeting.
Right.
I'll be traveling on the end of June meeting.
That's the 23rd.
Yep.
That's the 23rd. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And the next one after that is July 14th.
Yeah, and I'm on vacation that week.
Okay. Anyone else know about July 14th that you can think of?
I'll be here.
Okay. And after that, it's August 4th.
I'm not available on August 4th.
Okay. And then August 25th.
I might not be available for that meeting.
Okay, I'll make a note.
Those plans have not been firmed up, but that's why I asked about this, because I was informed that there may be some vacation plans brewing. So I wanted to find out. I'm not in charge of my calendar. Everybody else is.
Sounds about right. Yeah, including us, right? Yeah.
Both in, volunteer, private, and public. My work, my home life, everything. I have no control of everything.
Oh, God.
I believe I will be here for that meeting if you're not, Mark.
Okay.
And then the last summerish kind of one is September 15th. Okay.
Yep. So I'll also say I haven't decided whether to continue my membership. So technically my term expires at the end of June. I don't think I've mentioned it. My job actually changed last year. It didn't affect this last year because of COVID. There hasn't been much travel. My current job involves a lot more travel than my old one. So it's a little tricky. I think I missed that last meeting. I'll miss this next one. Also, there's some things going on at home that take a lot more time. If there's a short-term need, because we need some people, I could renew it for, I don't know, some for the summer or something like that. But yeah, I would like to transition out.
Has it been 3 years already, Jeff?
Somehow that happens.
Wow.
Time flies.
Yeah, and Judith will be done at the end of June as well. So I, can post kind of that we're searching for members again. Jeff, it's okay. I'll advertise for 2. And we'll kind of see where it goes. And, we'll just kind of keep in contact for the next couple weeks and see how you're feeling and see what kind of membership we have. But yeah, we'll have 2 vacancies if Jeff does not re-up. So I'll do some searching through what I call the nosy book that lists all the voters in town and what they do. So.
Is that a politically correct name for that? I'm thinking it's not.
It's not, but I don't know, like, what else is it but nosy? You only look in it if you're nosy. So I'm calling myself out, is what it is.
Okay. Okay. So Jeff, travel has been re-enabled at your workplace?
Yep, more and more.
Yeah, it's
COVID didn't go anywhere, but somehow travel's back.
yeah, at the company I work for, I started during the shutdown pandemic and I've not yet gone into the office. I don't even know where the bathrooms are in the office. Probably go in the building. So, so I'm not about to do that just yet unless I have to. But I was told yesterday to get my American Express corporate card. So that's ready on the wall.
Yes, traveling has commenced. My husband keeps leaving me too. So.
Yeah.
All right. So if anyone has any other dates that come up that you can't make it, just let me know. Otherwise, I'll keep this kind of tally running on my whiteboard at work so we can make sure we have quorum when we possibly drop down 1, maybe 2 members.
Yeah. Okay.
At least the benefit is the quorum is of sitting members, not those who could be seated. So that's a plus.
Yes. And you corrected me.
Oh, did you say the other way?
Yeah. Remember you and I exchanged mail?
Oh, yeah.
Because I had some recollection from legal counsel that it was.
Yes. Although I know Aldo, that was his, no, you need to do it. But then I remember sitting with him and going through the regs and he's like, okay.
Yeah.
So.
Good for you. Because I was on the other side of that coin.
Yeah.
I guess it's only really important if there's like long-standing, NOIs or something like that. But I'm trying to think if there's a lot of NOIs that have been around for a while. I don't.
Well, the 2 we have on the agenda are brand new. We'll have 1 for the next meeting. I just got that today. And I don't know of any else on the docket except for the dump coming, which could be after you already, are done. So you wouldn't even count as a quorum towards that anyway. So I think as long as we get, I don't know if we'll do 200 Turnpike, but I think we'll have enough members to carry through a quorum for that. So don't sweat it. You got to do what you got to do.
Okay.
It's been fun.
It's been really fun.
Well, thanks for your time, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Now Kevin and Liz just can't go anywhere. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I feel like Jeff's leaving is because of me. So sorry, everyone else.
I just referenced screaming. Yeah. So.
It's like she made comments about the lettuce field. I'm out.
I love a good lettuce field. All right. That's all that I got, guys.
Okay. Go Celtics. They're on at
Motion.
15. If anybody's a basketball fan, I'm really
Way
not.
too late though. I'm like the West
Isn't it?
Coast time is not good for me.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Yes, let's hear one.
So moved?
A second.
Second.
All in favor?
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Heat,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Cosmato.